This time we are gonna hop up a junkyard Joule Mopar 360. Dulcich, you think we can make 400 horsepower with this thing?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you're right. That is the biggest piece of garbage you've ever seen on Engine Masters, which is presented by AMSOIL and supported by Mr. Gasket and also Earls. But what you see as a completely clapped out Mopar 360 small block, I see as a guest star. This thing came directly from the other show that Steve Dulcich and I do, which is called Roadkill Garage. It's only on Motor Trend On Demand. And in a recent episode, we took a 75 or maybe 76 Dodge truck that had been rotting in Dulcich's backyard, and it probably hadn't run in 20 years. But we revived that engine and made it run and drive. We hopped it up a little bit and we threw it in my Challenger. But then we're like, you know what? We got to know, how much power will the 360 make? And so Dulcich returned it to bone stock. This thing is so worn out, you can't even believe it. What we're gonna do on this episode is run it stock and then start throwing some speed parts at it to see how much power you can make with a junkyard Joule. First up, throw it on the dyno and run it with Thermoquad. Will this thing even make 200 horsepower? I don't think so.
When you've got a worn out old engine like this Mopar 360, you might think that the oil doesn't matter at all, but I'm here to tell you it might matter more. We chose Z-Rod 2050 motor oil. It's a thick, high viscosity formula that'll soak up and sop up some of the bearing clearances and worn out rings. It's also the high zinc formula. This engine has a flat tappet cam. It's probably on the edge of worn out as it is. This might make it last long enough to make 400 horsepower with this old Mopar small block. Let's see if I can get that as good as Freiburger. Oh, made a mess.
We're about to fire up our bone stock junkyard 360 for the first time, and Dulcich swears this is gonna make, are you ready for this?
Again?
300 horsepower.
I'm secretly hoping for 300, but I think it'll make 260.
260 is your number?
Yeah.
That's a little more realistic, I think.
You're thinking 260?
Yeah, I'm thinking 260-ish.
I've seen the cylinders in this thing,
Yeah.
and I know what the cam looks like. I'm gonna give it 245.
Well, you're not considering it has 440 red stripe valve springs.
Oh, well, that's the key.
They're old and used from 1969, but...
Yeah, that's the only non-stock thing on this because we know we're gonna be changing the cam later, and so Steve just set the thing up so it can take that camshaft.
Plus it had the valve rotators originally, which has
Yep.
a really short spring, so they had to be changed. Look at the torque.
Your junk is junk. Can you pull up the graph?
It's your motor though, Freiburger.
I know, but we're about to fix it.
Yeah?
And by fix, I mean barely make power. Wow, 312 pound-feet at 1900 RPM. Might even call that 1800. Wow. And then it's all downhill from there. 207.9 horsepower. Not 208, 207.9.
Give me the 10th.
No, because it's just that bad.
He's begging for tenths now.
You know, when this thing was built, a Corvette only made 190 rated net horsepower.
This really is the worst motor I've ever run. This is depressing.
One of the
Well, let's
worst.
go fix it. Now our mission is to cheer up Uncle Steve.
It needs help.
We're gonna throw a bunch of junk at it. It's already got the Mallory distributor. We're gonna put in a cam and an RPM intake and a Holly on it.
Well, those are all good parts. So now we should be able to make a lot more power.
Like 250.
The cylinder boards are pretty
More?
worn out.
No, you know, after we can just get rid of all that junk on top of it, of a short block with 8 pistons in it, we should be able to make some decent power.
That's the plan.
Okay.
Let's tear it up.
Yeah.
Yay for us! 200 horsepower from 360 cubic inches. You know, that takes a talent. Not everybody can do that. It was horrible. So we're gonna throw the entire toolbox at this engine. Watch as we just raid the Summit catalog and hose it down with that Holley 750 double pumper, an Edelbrock RPM air gap dual plane intake manifold, and Edelbrock aluminum heads. Inside, we're gonna stuff in a Comp Cam's hydraulic flat tappet. It's what's called a single pattern cam. That means it's got the same specs on the intake and on the exhaust lobes, and that is 480 lift, 231 degrees of duration at 50, and 110 degree lobe separation angle. The blow-by on this thing is getting pretty brutal, but it's still gonna make more power. Let's go find out exactly how much. What's your level of annoyance at your Mopar failure right now?
Oh, I don't know. It could have a totally worn out and loose timing chain. It has no compression, has no cam. It really didn't have a chance to make horsepower the way it was.
Hot, hot, hot.
Whew. I don't know, Steve was calling this the worst engine that ever came through Westech Performance, but I think he might be just pulling my chain a little bit. You know, it wasn't that bad, right, Steve-O?
If that's what you want to go with, okay. But
Yeah,
no, it's
you know, that's just buddy kind of talk, kidding each other around, you know, really.
You know what this
Sure.
is really like?
Sure.
This is like, check out my new girlfriend, dude. She's hot, right?
And she's not.
Yeah.
Ooh, some Risto guy would give me like $500 for this.
Old engine like this, you often end up having to take the lifters out with a pair of channel locks like this because they wear, and they can get a ridge of metal around the edge that keeps them from coming out of the hole, and they get some varnish on them. They're just junk. You know how this is a special guest star from Roadkill Garage?
Yeah?
Well, it's continuing a long-held tradition on Roadkill Garage.
What's that?
Well, I removed the world's smallest camshaft,
Yeah.
and look
Oh,
at that.
the cam bearing?
The cam
No.
bearing. It's destroyed. Look, that is cam bearing right there.
Oh man, what do you think caused that?
Look, every single one of them is wiped out that bad. Look, there's a piece.
wow, look at that one.
Yeah, there's a piece of the cam bearing sitting on that connecting rod.
On the bright side, we've proved on Roadkill Garage that
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, you don't really need the cam bearings that much.
The ring ridge on these is so much, I mean, the cylinders are funnel shaped. They've got at least 10 thousandths bore wear, which means the cylinders are like this, which means the ring seal is junk. And seriously, that cam bearing, I was willing to let go of the one on the Cleveland because it was kind of okay.
That's all flaking the bearing material
This
off.
one is way beyond that level of butchery. So, yeah, I blame you.
My fault again. I gotta be really gentle not to mar the cam bearings, right?
That is a $10 saddle on a $2 horse. This is kind of like Roadkill, where we throw really good parts on really junky cars.
What we're installing here are the Edelbrock Performer RPM heads. It's kind of like a street aluminum head. It'll take 50 pounds off the nose of your car and give you a lot more flow than a stock head.
Edelbrock Performer RPM air gap dual plane intake manifold. Once again, way too good for this engine. Damn, direct connection.
What does that mean? Why does it say direct connection?
That's really, really good.
That should be some
Old
Chrysler
school.
history. What is that?
That is Chrysler history. Direct Connection was the performance parts division of Chrysler Company
Right.
for a long time, and then they dropped that name, but
It was your direct connection to performance parts through the
Exactly.
factory.
yeah, I have to polish these now. From here to here, pretty good.
We're all brand new.
From here to here,
We're total garbage.
yeah.
How's that gonna average out? That might average out to being okay.
But, well, here's the thing I'm really hoping. If it makes 400 horsepower, that will have doubled its power output for complete garbage. That's the only thing that can save the situation and remove the humiliation of those cam bearings.
If it makes 400 horsepower, it'll be a total miracle. It really will. It might do it.
Well, let's figure it out. We got this thing wrapped up with all these great parts, which includes now a 750 double pumper Holley. And even though we know that the guts of this engine are completely savaged and trash, I'm gonna use some break-in oil in it because I don't want to destroy that flat tappet camshaft. And that's a actual serious problem these days, is flattening a camshaft if you're not using one of these break-in oils, high zinc, etc. We've actually got the whole pan full of it now. All that's left is to go fire this thing up. Cross your fingers for 400 horsepower.
It could be getting water in the oil.
It's just completely worn out. Look at how much blow-by is going out the valve cover.
I mean, look how nice the curve is, though.
Yeah.
I think we're done.
Completely done.
Completely. We haven't spun a rod bearing
You
yet.
guys are out of ideas already?
I don't know. Here's the good news and the bad news about this. Let's start with the good news. It made 140 more horsepower and 75 more pound-feet of torque. That's huge. It made 386 pound-feet of torque and 348 horsepower. That's the bad news. This thing should be making 30 more numbers than that on the horsepower range. The torque is not too embarrassing, but the thing is, it's just rolling over early. It's smoking like a choo-choo train. The bottom end of this motor is garbage.
What do you think would happen if we did like 125 shot of nitrous?
You have no ring left anyway. There's a lesson here, which is I thought we would be able to sort of polish a turd, and instead the turd still stinks, right?
As I said earlier, it was the worst engine I'd ever seen.
And still is. Let's pull this junk off the dyno and send it to the machine shop. Give it 10 to 1 and some new rings.
I
Come back.
can rebuild it and make it better.
That's right. That's what we have to do. Dude.
What?
I thought we were friends.
What did I do?
How could you give me this wasted engine?
Oh man, it's actually not that bad.
What are you talking about?
Come on, it's 41 years old, and it was probably junk 20 years ago.
So you're a glass half full on the 140 horsepower gain?
I think that was pretty good.
I'm a glass half empty on like, what, $3,000 worth of speed parts, and it still makes 350 horsepower.
You remember all that blow-by huffing out of the valve cover?
Yeah, that's why I'm complaining. I don't know how you could do that to me.
Just imagine if that was pushing down on the piston. We would have had like 30 or 40 more horsepower.
I guess so.
Yeah.
You know what I really thought was gonna save it is the direct connection valve covers.
Well, they do look nice.
That's really all that we've got left at this point. So yeah, what are we gonna do with the 360 from this point?
I don't know, I'd say we just chuck it in your Challenger. It's pretty good. No, I'll rebuild it for you.
Maybe you'll see that the next time we come back on Engine Masters, which is presented by AMSOIL and supported by Mr. Gasket and Earl's Plumbing, where maybe Dulcich will not shaft me.
No. Sorry, dude. No, I'm not.
Can we make 400 horsepower with bolt-ons on this junk Mopar 360? Stay tuned to find out. That sucked. Ready? Stay tuned to find out. Check it out. Más potente.
Hay más bueno de todo el mundo.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
All that. Whoa.
What happened? You dropped the bolt in there?
There's an 1/8-inch pipe plug living in there now.
And that's where it's gonna stay.
I have a feeling that's not getting me on any NHRA top fuel teams.
No, it's in there to agitate the bottle, right?
Right. It was in there to agitate Brule.
It did that.
Yikes, is this gonna be a fun episode, because we're gonna find out how much Pro Charger boost we can ramrod through a cast piston 350 Chevy. Okay, first of all, let me explain the title of this video. How much boost can a stock engine take? Same thing last time when we ran a 305 Chevy and blew it up on nitrous. People said, that is not a stock engine, the heads and cam have been done. Here's the deal. What I really mean is how much boost, how much nitrous can a stock short block take? A short block is too confusing to put in a YouTube title. What it means is everything inside the cylinder block of the engine. Cast pistons, junk connecting rods, stock rod bolts, a cast crankshaft, bearings that are nothing special. That's all the stuff that is going to fail under boost. Cylinder heads are not the problem. So what we're doing here is we have literally a stock rebuilder short block, the type of thing that you could buy at O'Reilly Auto Parts or Pep Boys or whatever. It's a 350 Chevy, call it a 5.7 liter, and we're gonna cram a whole bunch of boost through it. The only thing that we've done to ensure life on this short block is that Dulcich took it all apart and opened up the ring end gap. The thing is, when you're under nitrous or boost making more heat, the piston ring will expand, and if the gap at the end of it touches, it'll lift up, break the piston, and it's all over. You can go back to when we blew up the 305 on nitrous and see exactly that. In this case, he took it from like a stock 22 thousandths or something like that and ran 30 thousandths gap on the top ring, 34 thousandths gap on the second ring. That should prevent them from butting. We also ran an MLS head gasket on this because under boost you can get head gasket failures, and our hope is that the extra springiness of that MLS gasket, which is multi-layer steel, will prevent that from happening. The top end has been modified. We've got some Trick Flow 195cc heads on it. I put a single plane intake manifold on it. It's a Holley Strip Dominator. Now, if you watch the last 2 episodes with this engine, you can see that in naturally aspirated trim, we've run it with a dual plane, which is really more appropriate for what this is. But when we're cramming boost through it, the single plane is gonna offer better cylinder to cylinder distribution than a dual plane would, and so it's just giving us that much margin of safety. Up top, we've got the 750 CFM Holley XP carburetor. That's what we're gonna run naturally aspirated. Other than that, the short block bone stock with the exception of a Comp Cams 280H, which is a Magnum flat tappet grind, nothing special at all. So what we're gonna do is throw this thing on the dyno and find out what it makes naturally aspirated, and then start cramming boost through it, and maybe parts will fall out. Every once in a while, the guys at AMSOIL tell us that we are completely off our nut and cramming a bunch of boost through an engine where we have no idea what the bearings are and no idea the clearances is one of those times, which is why this time they went with all the cowbell. Dominator racing oil in a straight 60 weight. They want to make sure that when we have our failure, it is not oil related, and so they're looking for as much cushioning between that connecting rod bearing and the crankshaft as we can possibly get. And I'm going all the way this time, once again, with the funnel, because I love my Mr. Gasket cast aluminum fin valve cover. I don't want to get oil all over it. All right, our victim's on the dyno. We've already tuned the thing up, and unfortunately, it's kind of weak sauce, but we knew it was gonna be because that big single plane intake manifold is really a mismatch for the low compression and very small camshaft that's in this thing. Let's fire it up and show them how disappointing it is. Okay.
Yeah, about the same up top.
A perfect example of why a single plane is not the best choice most of the time on the street.
So our final answer is an oddly shaped curve that's not very good, but we did make 390 pound-feet of torque all the way up there at, what was it?
5,000?
5,000 RPM, and then it made peak power at 5,500. So basically what that tells you is that it's killing a bunch of torque down here where it should have peak torque at, let's say, 4,500 RPM.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the characteristic of the single plane.
But it is the right intake for boost, and I think we should go there right now because I never want to see this again.
Yeah, I don't want to do this anymore.
Right. So, pro-charge it! Well, that was underwhelming, but now we're gonna go big with a boost. This is a ProCharger centrifugal supercharger. Now, I've never run the ProCharger brand before, but I am impressed so far. The quality on this thing is nice. These are made in USA. They've got a billet impeller, they have a billet gear drive setup, and the company makes blowers all the way from, a tiny 850 horsepower capable unit all the way to 3,500 horsepower, which is cool. The particular model that they asked us to run today is an F1 A94. It's got a 9-inch volute, it's nice and compact. It can flow 1,625 CFM. It can make 1,200 horsepower. It's a self-contained unit, meaning that it does not need oil plumbed to it from the engine. That's a big deal to me. I hate having to run a pressure line and the return into your oil pan, poking a hole in it and all that stuff. The other thing that is good about having self-contained oiling is that it stays cooler, but the part I like is that when we scatter this engine, we're not gonna be sending oil full of shrapnel from the engine through the supercharger and killing it at the same time. One thing about this unit is that it has a 5.4-to-1 step-up ratio. What that means is for every 1 turn of this pulley that's driven by the belt, we are turning the impeller 5.4 times. See, this unit is capable of turning 74,000 RPM. Yeah, that's a big deal. We're probably not gonna be spinning it that fast in this particular test. Now, we are gonna run this with a blow-through carburetor. You need a special carburetor to do that. EFI is just a smarter way to go, though you can pull this off, and if you're gonna try, I recommend one of these carburetors modified by a shop called CSU. This is an 850 Holly. They've set it up with their magic just for blow-through applications. Westech has had a lot of luck with this unit right here, and so that's what we're gonna run today. And when we do, we're gonna start small and go big. Here's how. The larger the pulley that you put on the supercharger, the slower you turn the supercharger, and so the less boost you make. So we're gonna start mild. We're gonna find out how many smaller pulleys we can put on before we send this 350 to Kingdom Come. Last time we ran this engine, it had a 671 wind on it, which is a Roots type blower. Now we're going to the centrifugal. The Roots tends to make more low-end boost, low-end torque, whereas the centrifugal tends to gain more boost with RPM, and it'll make much more high-end horsepower.
So anyway, what are we gonna do here? We're just going to run it till it
Till parts fall
expires?
out, yeah. Either we need to blow it up, or we need to pick a number at which it's been so heroic that it needs to live instead
I
of
can
being...
pick that number.
What is it?
750 horsepower.
That's exactly what was on my mind.
No way.
If it makes 750 and lives,
It lives.
Yeah,
It gets
there's
the
no way.
letter from the governor at that point.
Yeah, I don't think that I can make connecting rods hang out if,
If
it
this thing
survives
makes
that.
750, it's going in a museum.
ProCharger saw our earlier episode that we did with the, I guess it was the late model Hemi, where I was whining and complaining about all the serpentine belt kits, which is this. It's a ribbed belt instead of being cogged, and they always slip. And ProCharger is like, nope, we're gonna prove to you that our kit does not slip. So we're gonna find that out later today. I do like their tensioner arrangement and actual aluminum pulley. I think we're finally ready to fire this thing up. I hope it survives more than this pulley arrangement. I want this to be much smaller. How far does it go?
It's going to break at 670.
670.
It's going all the way, and it's gonna survive. 750, we'll cap it right there.
Wow, see, I was gonna say 650.
I wanted to cap it at 650.
Yeah.
Just to say, it made it to 650. Come on, let it live.
I hate wrecking stuff for absolutely no reason, but the audience loves it.
It'll make it.
Well, it's really not for no reason. We're finding out where cast pistons fail.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the science, right? I also changed from Rocket Brand 114 to Rocket Brand 118. I'm giving it all the octane we can, specifically designed for blower motors and lots of boost. So we're just trying to take everything and make it as safe as we possibly can. Because we really, at this point, don't know how much boost it's going to make. It'll probably make 6 pounds, and then we have to go change pulleys.
Right.
But we're going to find out where it goes.
I think it's gonna be well over 10 pounds with this setup. Like 11, 12.
Might be. That's what we're here for. Find out. If we're going to break it, I hope something hits the door.
Okay, well, make it happen. Woo! 635! Wow!
So there you have a smooth Hyundai at the peak over roots.
Amazing!
If this were a tune-up at the drag races, we would probably lean it out a bit. But I was actually rolling in at the really low boost numbers because it's centrifugal. It was like 12 force. Like, okay, this is cool. Then I'm just watching the carburetor work flawlessly, and it goes down into the 11s at about 10 pounds. And by the time we were at 14 pounds, it was in the 10s, which is granted a bit fat, but I'm better with that.
Call up the graph. Let's see where the peaks are.
Wow.
Look how far it pushed the peak torque.
It's a rising boost curve with the centrifugal, so it just keeps pushing peak torque up.
Yeah.
It's
Crazy.
very cool.
This is crazy.
Dulcich was right on the boost.
What? 14?
He said it's going to make up there. I think it's going to make 14.
14?
Yeah, and it made 14. You are smart sometimes.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Come on. No, it was a backhanded compliment.
We just made 561 pound-feet of torque at 5,400 RPM. That torque peak being pushed like 1,000 RPM higher than naturally aspirated just because of airflow. 634.7 horsepower at what was it, 6,300 RPM?
Yeah, we were right up there. Now it is flat, so but I'll run it another 100.
Wow. I gotta see the overlay. Show me naturally aspirated versus this. Wow! Yeah, I think I'd choose that. Look at that, cast piston, but 118 octane rocket brand, 30 degrees of timing.
Well, and that may not be what you need, but it's what we did to be really safe and see how far we could take it.
Right.
We could back the octane off. We could probably add another couple degrees of timing.
No, I want to make it live as long as it can.
Exactly.
There you go, 14 pounds, stage 1, 561 pound-feet of torque, 634 horsepower. Ready to go with a smaller pulley?
680, 750, who knows?
All right, so with this blower pulley, we're spinning at about 55,000 at peak RPM with this motor. And we're gonna put a smaller pulley on here. That's gonna make the blower spin even faster. We should have about 65,000 RPM at peak RPM with the motor.
650.6 horsepower at 6,200 RPM, and it is rolling over at that point. And it looks like our torque peak is 575 at 5,800. It's weird, the torque peak and the horsepower peak, the point of RPM, keep getting closer and closer because it's just cramming air through the engine, which just extends that torque peak, which is what makes more horsepower. Let's go step it up.
Yep.
Should we let Dulcich pick the pulley or?
Sure. Oh man.
Sure, live dangerously. Well, that was 14.7 pounds and 651 horsepower. So my prediction of parts on the floor at 650 was wrong. We thought we were gonna make big steps. We changed our mind. We're gonna keep going small because we really want to see how far we can go before it explodes. If we went straight to like 30 pounds of boost right now, we wouldn't know if it could tolerate maybe 18. So this is a 4.25 inch pulley. Now we're gonna go to the 4. Look at that! Yeah, you can see the drop off, but 706 horsepower and 616 pound-feet of torque, basically within 300 RPM of each other. That is nutso for a cast piston small block.
And it did not seem like it was really in any distress.
It hasn't smoked, it hasn't blown out the valve covers. Maybe there's something to be said for a 5/64 ring with 300 pounds of tension. So now we're gonna go to the 3.7 inch pulley.
Here we go.
What we just saw there, our final with the 3.7 inch pulley and 18 pounds of boost with a little bit of belt slip is 653 pound-feet of torque at 5,800 RPM and 733 horsepower at 6,000 RPM.
I have complete confidence in this motor now. It can
It's
go
dumb,
800.
isn't it? With that Rocket 118,
and reasonable timing and good gas and all of those things that a lot of guys don't do.
While you guys are celebrating, we have one more pulley that we can blow it up with.
I know, and we've got to make that belt like a piano string.
Small pulley, piano string, 780.
And then 2 more degrees of timing.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
You just want to kill it, don't you?
Let's put the pulley
I
on
thought
it.
we were going to give it a reprieve after 750.
Yeah, that was this morning.
Yeah, great.
Mic drop.
The belt still slipped, but I saw 25 PSI.
Did you? 765 horsepower. Wow. Didn't make 700 pound-feet though, made 693. That is the comparison of naturally aspirated power to our boosted power. That's insanity.
That's 300 pound-feet increase.
And look, almost doubled the horsepower of the thing.
A winner.
This morning when I was driving in here, I was debating with myself if I needed to bring in a shovel, a rake, or a mop.
Yeah, and I was expecting a black cloak too, like the
This thing was
cruel
just gonna be gone.
executioner you were.
I know, but now I love this thing. I cannot believe it survived. There's so much I'm impressed about this whole operation.
Well, I mean, the thing was a superhero. I mean, that stock little 350 Chevy bottom end.
It didn't blow out a breather cap. It didn't blow out the dipstick tube.
Yeah, it was just awesome.
I don't get it.
No, that's
at
great
all.
horsepower.
I'm super impressed with the Pro Charger. They've got their act together on that program.
Yeah.
I'm really impressed with the CSU carburetor.
Agreed.
That was the best blow-through carburetor tune-up, I mean, out of the box I've ever run.
Yeah, by
and
far.
The fact that this cast piston rebuilder short block survived is just mind-blowing.
Yeah, but bear in mind, that was on the dyno where we had a handle on every parameter, or at least Brule did.
I know, that's the one caveat I would give to this for sure. I would not do this in a car. I wouldn't go down the drag strip with this a whole bunch because eventually you're gonna break something and drive
Right.
over the crank. It's a controlled situation in the dyno cell. It's more brutal in the car, especially with ambient temperatures and water temp and
But you're only talking about that much more durability parts. Better rods, better pistons, maybe upgraded rings.
a Dart SHP block, and you're good to go. You could run this thing forever. So I think what people really learned here is what's possible with a super simple combo. I can't imagine how much better it would be with like a solid roller camshaft and a real short block. And you learned how to tune this thing to make it survive, showing that you can do this in the real world. And this is expensive.
Yeah.
But in the world of what would become 800 horsepower with a proper motor, it's not that expensive.
No, it's probably the cheapest way I can think of doing it, really.
I know. In fact, I'm planning on doing exactly this with that supercharger to put in our land speed car for El Mirage.
All right, that'll be cool.
I know. I want to do
Yeah.
like a 12-degree head thing. It's going to be crazy. And you will see that on a future episode of Engine Masters at some point. So look for it on Engine Masters, which is presented by AMSOIL with support, as always, from Mr. Gasket, like these swanky valve covers, and also Earl's Vapor Guard hose. You know what the real question is?
What?
What's the worst hair situation? Dulcich now, or you with the ponytail, or me with the mullet? This time on Engine Masters, camshaft specification gobbledygook explained. And we're gonna show you the power of a small cam versus a big cam. First off, we want to thank AMSOIL and Mr. Gasket and Earl's Plumbing for sponsoring this whole shebang, because it means me and my buddies get to play with engines. And this time, I'm going to try and make it at least a little bit educational by showing you exactly what is meant by all of the basic camshaft specs. What does lift mean? Duration, lobe separation angle? You're going to find out all of that in the second segment. But first, we're going to baseline an engine here with a smaller camshaft so that later in the show we can tell you what happens with a much bigger camshaft. Our victim today is a 372 cubic inch small block Chevy. Sort of an odd displacement. That's because the entire cylinder block, crank pistons, rods are all aftermarket. It's a Dart SHP block, which has a 4 1/8 inch bore, and it's got the same stroke as a 350 Chevy, which is 3.48 inches. That adds up to 372 cubic inches. Don't even ask me what that means in liters. It's got 10.5-to-1 compression, squeezing into an Airflow Research cylinder head that has 195 cc intake runners. That's a really good cylinder head. Up top, we've got the Edelbrock Performer RPM air gap intake manifold. We love that thing. And we love it even more when we stack a 1-inch carburetor spacer on it. That tends to give it just a little bit more plenum volume, and we've seen that that makes them like to run to a little bit of a higher RPM. We have a Holley 750 CFM XP carburetor. The exhaust headers are 1 3/4 inch dyno headers. So the only variable we're gonna have in this entire show is the camshaft. Right now, we have a Comp Cams XE276HR in the engine. The duration at 50 is 224 on the intake and 230 on the exhaust. We're gonna explain all about what that means in the second half of the show, right before we put in a much bigger camshaft. But right now, we're gonna roll it in the dyno cell, sauce it up with some AMSOIL, and find out what our baseline is with the cute little camshaft. For this test, what's gonna be really important is consistency in the performance of the hydraulic roller lifters that we're using with both camshafts. The thing is, with some oils, engine temperature can change the consistency of the oil quite a bit. It thins out as it gets hotter. That's why AMSOIL recommended the Dominator racing oil for this application, because it's designed to be very stable regardless of engine temperature. Whoops, there it goes. All right, Steve's got the engine all warmed up, tuned up, ready to go. So we're gonna whack it and find out what it does with the little adorable camshaft. Thing is, we're gonna run this in an RPM range that's way bigger than we normally would for a cam this small. What are we running it from?
3,500 to 7,000.
35 to 7.
Or 69 actually. But
A cam of this size, 224 at 50 on the intake, generally does not like 7,000 RPM, but we want to be able to show what happens with the bigger camshaft. But Steve's chuckling. He knows what we don't know.
What's that?
Probably that this thing is magic. Let's find out.
I bet you it is. I think it'll exceed your expectations. Did I just see it make peak power at 6,200?
Really? Let's have a look at the curve.
Boy, I don't know.
Wow! Peak horsepower is basically 5,900 to 6,100 RPM. What we just did is 467 pound-feet of torque in a nice fat area here, right between 4,200 and 4,600. And up at the top, we made 470 horsepower at 6,000 RPM. The good cylinder head carried the airflow higher than Dulcich and I were anticipating. But see, the thing is, if this had a bad head on it, right around here is where it would start to roll over in power. But you can see this is where that curve flattens out and is being carried. Man, I can't believe it goes all the way to 6,500. Part of that is because with the smaller camshaft, it is closing the intake valve sooner so that it's capturing more compression, so it's making good torque.
I'm going to make my prediction and tell you that the bigger cam is going to make the same torque.
At a higher RPM.
Volumetric efficiency, we'll just be moving it up in the RPM range.
That's our final number. This is a happy motor. We're gonna go put the big cam in it, and once again, we're gonna feel really old because we're gonna go, this was really good.
When we're all wrapped up, we're going to go, I want the 224.
I know.
No, but it really is good.
It really is good.
I mean, it's a 6,500 RPM motor with a 224 cam.
And makes 470 horsepower.
Yeah, and
Yep.
it's really efficient right all the way up there.
Compare this If the viewer can cast their mind back to our 410 Mopar that has a not very good cylinder head for the engine displacement on it. It has 20 more degrees of camshaft duration, a worse cylinder head, more displacement, and makes 435 horsepower. It makes 35 less horsepower than a good head with a smaller cam
RPM
on less
with a cam
displacement.
20 degrees bigger.
At 5,800 RPM.
Now, granted, the engine's a little bigger, but actually, 20 degrees, that's a lot of difference in camshaft.
If you have a cylinder head and intake manifold that don't flow a lot of air, you need a lot of camshaft duration to make up for that.
And it doesn't.
And it doesn't.
It just doesn't.
And if you have a cylinder head and intake that really are good, you can have a less camshaft with better results, and it just makes for a happier engine overall. So the lesson there, always buy the best cylinder head you can. So that was the power with our small camshaft, and now we're gonna go throw in our big, fat, hairy camshaft. But what does that really mean? Well, we're talking about the camshaft specs, and I'm here to sort of train you on all of that gibberish that I talk about at the beginning of every episode when I'm mentioning cam specs. The first thing you need to know about cam specs is really simple to understand. It's valve lift. Knowing that the cam's job is to open and close the intake and exhaust valves in the engine in time with the 4-stroke cycle, there's a couple of things that we can do with it in order to make more performance, one of which is lift. Lift describes how far the valve is opened off of the seat in the combustion chamber. For example, a typical street cam, a hot street cam, might have 500 thousandths lift. That's half an inch. A typical mild bracket race, drag race engine might have 750 thousandths of an inch lift. That's 3/4 of an inch. Opening the valve more means you can get more air into the engine and make more power. More lift tends to make more power if the cylinder head will support it. Now the next spec is camshaft duration, which is measured in degrees of crankshaft rotation. It means as the engine is spinning, how long is that valve off the seat? For example, short duration, open, closed. Longer duration, open, closed. Think of it as a door. If you open a door and slam it, maybe one person can get through. If you open a door and leave it open for half an hour and then slam it, obviously a whole lot more people get through. It's the same thing here. The longer that valve is open, the more air and fuel you can get into the cylinder, the more power you can make. So the next thing that you need to know is lobe separation angle. Now, if you know that these two lobes on the camshaft are for the same cylinder, you can see that they have an angle to each other. Let's look at it like this. Let's say this is one lobe and this is the other. They can be ground at a different relationship like this, and that is gonna affect the valve opening and closing points, which can be really drastic as far as camshaft performance goes. This is really hard to understand because there's a lot of magic that cam manufacturers can do with the lobe to affect that lobe separation angle and where the opening and closing points are on the valves. But here is a general thing to understand. The tighter the lobe separation angle, the more overlap you tend to have. The wider the lobe separation angle, the less overlap you tend to have. What is overlap? That is the period of time at which both the intake and the exhaust valves are open at the same time. As the piston is coming up on the exhaust stroke, obviously the exhaust valve is open, pushing all those gases out, but the intake valve opens before that piston hits top dead center on the exhaust stroke, and so they're both open at the same time. You get some exhaust reversion into the intake and things like that, and when you have a lot of overlap, that's what makes an engine sound really racy. That's that like really ratty sounding camshaft is due to a lot of overlap. Now, a lot of overlap with a tight lobe separation angle tends to favor really strong mid-range and high RPM power. A wide lobe separation angle with less overlap tends to favor lower RPM power. So this is something you shouldn't worry about too much. If you get a shelf cam, meaning one that's just offered in the catalog, they will have dialed this in for you. Basically, Comp Cams grinds all their street stuff on 110 degree lobe separation angle, and you'll see racier stuff will be into like 105, 108, and tamer stuff or things designed for EFI tend to be in the range of 112 to 115. Those are the specs of what we call big cams and small cams. But you don't need to know any of that because right now you're gonna see the real world example of how it affects your engine. The cam that we just took out The duration number at 50 thousandths tappet lift is 224 on the intake, 230 on the exhaust. It has 502 lift on the intake, 510 on the exhaust. It's on a 110 degree lobe separation angle. Now the cam that we're about to throw in is a lot bigger. The intake duration at 50 thousandths tappet lift is 242. 18 degrees bigger than the 224, which is a big change. And on the exhaust side, it's got 250 degrees of duration at 50 thousandths tappet lift, which is 20 more than this one at 230. That's a big change. The lift is significantly different also. Instead of 502 and 510, it has 558 thousandths of an inch of lift on both the intake and the exhaust sides. However, it is ground on the same lobe separation angle of 110 degrees. So after all that gibberish, let's just go throw the thing in the engine and find out how much power it makes. Okay, cam swap. Oh wow, this thing has stud girdles on it.
We don't need to put that back on, do we?
Brule. So we're gonna change the camshaft as fast as we can here, which involves popping all the rocker arms off, taking all the valve train out, taking off the intake manifold, removing the water pump, removing the damper. Fortunately, we have a two-piece front cover, which is gonna save us time because it means we don't have to drop the oil pan also. Done this a zillion times and it's always just a time suck.
This is always the best part.
Once again, we had Brule warm this thing up, so he knows the answer. We don't know the answer.
I love it.
I know.
That's one of the few times that I do and you don't.
Right. Wow. What we're looking at here is the difference between the small cam on the red line and the big cam on the black line. And you can see, as one would expect, the smaller cam is making more power below 4,500 RPM. But from that point up, the big cam takes over. And the thing is, it's continuing to make power as RPM climb, instead of sort of flattening out in here and taking a dive. Although really the change in the shape of the curve isn't as different as I had sort of hoped. So with the bigger cam, we made 507.9 horsepower at 6,400, 6,500 RPM, and the torque peak was 472.2 at 4,800 RPM. As you know, the theory goes, it's proven, the smaller cam favors low RPM performance and the larger camshaft duration favors high RPM performance, the pivot point being about 4,500 RPM. And there's a lot of people who go, oh, well, that's only where I ever drive my car anyway, which is true unless you're racing.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I think it's obvious that if it was a street car and truly just a daily driver, the
small cam's
224 is much nicer. But you know, that big cam would almost make you want to go race
Oh
it.
no, look at that thing. I mean, that's way, way, way bigger.
Yeah, it would make you want to accelerate.
About 38 horsepower. The acceleration that you're getting from 4,500 all the way up is just incredible.
See, and theoretically, if we ran this low enough, maybe down to 2,000, it would almost look like an X. But,
Right.
but realistically, you don't drive anything at 2,000. So all that's just an unused RPM range. So
Well, when you say that, you don't drive anything at wide open throttle at 2,000.
That's- You're right.
Which one of you guys owns the theory of torque potential?
I think we both do, kind of. I mean, we
I
talked
bought
about it
into
through our
but
testing.
did you invent it? Here's the
No,
theory
I
of
don't
torque
know.
potential. So for every given displacement cylinder head, intake manifold, amount of airflow, the theory is there's a certain amount of torque the engine's going to make regardless of the camshaft, unless you go to the extremes on the curve.
Right.
And that's what we saw here. The gain in torque is not much at all. It's like 2 or 3 pound-feet, but the RPM at peak torque is higher, and that's part of the reason that it makes more horsepower. Is that because horsepower is a function of torque and RPM, anytime you can be making more torque at higher RPM, you are therefore making more horsepower. So when you're moving the engine's entire power curve up, you're making more horsepower.
Look at Formula One stuff that's really tiny, probably doesn't make much torque, or at one point in time, but they would rev 18,000 RPM and make 800 horsepower.
Right.
Right.
So it's all engine speed.
Smaller camshaft, obviously better on the street, bigger camshaft, better on the track.
Yeah, and maybe for somebody there's something in between, 230, 236, or something like that, that's kind of a compromise of both, where it's still got idle vacuum, where you can have power brakes and those sort of things, but still gives you a little more peak power, so it's a little faster.
That's picture perfect on what this test was supposed to be, I think.
Sometimes it turns out the way we meant it to.
Okay, that's a wrap for the day.
Great job, guys.
Dulcich, the internet's gonna go nuts when they find out that bigger cams make more power.
I know, we're just geniuses, once again at Engine Masters.
Well, it's not like I was trying to prove anything with this. I was more trying to train people on stuff, but I learned something really significant that's gonna alter my life.
Me too.
What?
You go first.
Good cylinder heads with a tiny camshaft are a pretty good thing.
And big camshafts with good heads make a lot of power, but if you had junk heads, you probably wouldn't have seen that much difference. 40 horsepower?
We've seen that before on Engine Masters, especially with that small block Mopar we keep talking about. The head on it is just limiting. It's got a huge camshaft. I'd much rather have the tiny camshaft and the massive cylinder head.
I know we're supposed to be testing camshafts, but we're raving about how great the cylinder heads are.
I know. Well, do you realize this 372 makes more power than a couple of the 408s that we've tested?
Oh yeah, by a large margin on some of them.
It's pretty good. So that's the thing I really like about Engine Masters, is that we always set out to do one thing, and this time it was really obvious. It was just basics. What does a small cam do? What does a big cam do? But we always learn something, and to me, that was the big takeaway here.
Always get the best cylinder head you can, and you'll have a way better engine.
Spend money. That's our message here on Engine Masters. Fester cash. Your thing will make more power, because that's what you need in your life, is more power, and we'll give it to you every time on Engine Masters. You would see that they have a relationship somewhat like this. This being one lobe, this being the other. Now, boy, I hate myself right now. I'm the one that's sick. How come you guys are hacking?
Well, mine's from 50 years of smoking. His is no reason.
I don't know, it's just being social.
Just trying to fit in?
Yeah.
You know, when I was very young, there was a company that we did some work for. It was a molybdenum mine.
They had that in the 1800s?
Wow. It's actually back in the 80s.
Okay, let's call that a day.
In a world of numbers where dreams collide, Ada's genius couldn't hide. She saw the future, lines of code, a digital world that's ready to explode. She wrote the program, she set the pace. With every number, a brand new race. Mathematical magic in her mind. The first computer left the world behind. Tick, tick, the gears turn fast. Ada's vision's built to last. In the binary, she's the queen, living life inside a dream. Break, go, let's rise and shine. Ada's world, it's time to fly. In every beat, in every sound, her legacy will keep us bound. The future's here, it's in our hands. With every pulse, we take our hands. With every pulse, we take a stand. Core rhythm, hearts collide. Decoding our world from the inside. She saw machines dance, numbers in play. A brand new language paving the way. Loops and logic patterns so bright. Ada's algorithms brought them to light. She trained the power in ones and zeros. She turned her thoughts into heroes' flows. From paper to circuits, the sparks alive. Ada Lovelace made numbers thrive. Tick, tick, the gears turn fast. Ada's vision's built to last. In the binary, she's the queen, living life inside a dream. Break, go, let's rise and shine. Ada's world, it's time to fly. In every beat, in every sound, her legacy will keep us bound. The future's here, it's in our hands. With every pulse, we take our hands. With every pulse, we take a stand. Core rhythm, hearts collide. Decoding our world from the inside. Faster than the lightning strike, she wrote the future, making it right. In every line, in every beat, her digital dreams can't be beat. From past to now, her vision grows. Her name in history always glows. No the limits here, no turning back. We're on Ada's futuristic track. Final break the code, let's rise and shine. Ada's world, it's time to fly. In every beat, in every sound, your legacy will keep us bound. The future's here, it's in our hands. With every pulse we take our hands. With every pulse we take a stand. Neck or rhythm, hearts collide. Decoding our world from the inside. Feel the beat, the numbers sing. Ada Lovelace, the coding queen. Neck or energy, so alive. Her digital dream will always thrive.
This is the Engine Masters carburetor versus the EFI title match, round 2. This time, multi-point injection versus a carburetor on the same intake manifold. This is Engine Masters presented by AMSOIL, where way back in episode 2, we did our very first EFI versus carburetor showdown, and we're at it again. But when we did it the first time, we ran it on an LS engine with a carbureted intake manifold, and we used the carburetor versus one of those throttle body self-learning EFI kits. And there was a lot of hardcore guys that were like, no, that's not EFI. Real EFI is multi-point with a custom tune. Well, that's what we're doing here right now with a complete Holley HP setup on top of this small block Chevy. We're gonna compare it to 2 different carburetors. You know, in the meantime, between that early episode and now, I think it's gotten a whole lot easier to run multi-point injection on common engines. Holley sells this entire kit that you can use to convert any 4-barrel based V8 into EFI with a 4-barrel throttle body flowing 1,000 CFM, and you get the rails, the computer, all of the sensors, everything that you need to make the thing run. This thing went on this engine in a snap, and Brule got it all tuned up so that we can compare it to the carburetors. We're running this deal on an Edelbrock Victor Jr. intake manifold. It's a single plane, and it's been modified to accept injectors, although you can buy a manifold like this straight off the shelf now with fuel rails and everything. The engine that we're running this thing on is a small block Chevy that you've seen a bunch on Engine Masters. The last time we had it out, I think we did a water pump shootout, and it made like 460 horsepower. It's a blueprint 383 short block with some hopped up heads and a bigger cam than the crate engine comes with. Very much standard average stuff. You probably have something like this in your car, and we're gonna answer those questions about whether you really wanna step up to multi-point EFI or if you can get away with a carburetor. We're gonna put the thing on the dyno right now, AMSOIL it up, and baseline it with a perfect multi-point EFI tune-up before we throw carburetors on it and answer once and for all, what's really better for power production, EFI or carbs? There's no real rocket science when it comes to oil for EFI versus carburetor, so we're gonna run our little 3D3 on the premium protection 1040 AMSOIL that it's always been on. One thing to think about though is I notice a lot of guys will run carburetors like really rich, and that can lead to oil contamination and shorten up the oil change interval. Whereas if you have EFI, I just poured this all over the valve cover, you can probably extend that oil change interval and save some money. Wow, that's a mess. Now we're heading into our very first test, which is going to be the baseline with EFI on top of the Victor Jr. intake on our 383. Steve's thinking that there's a chance the carburetor is actually going to be very, very close to the EFI, and so when we look at tests where the numbers are just like onesies, twosies here and there as far as horsepower and torque numbers, we'll do 3 runs and average them to remove any anomalies.
That's actually a pretty good run into the little small block.
I've called it many times the ultimate average motor.
It's so average. It's better than average on horsepower.
good consistent throughout all the pulls.
Yeah, it's nice, huh?
Yeah. So looking at the average of the last 3 dyno pulls, which basically were identical, I mean, there was almost no wiggle in them at all. Here's our overall curve. We made 474.2 horsepower at 5,700 RPM, and the torque peak is oddly close. It's 5,100 RPM and 462.2 pound-feet. And that's that single plane intake manifold. If it had a dual plane, it'd be making its torque peak a little bit lower. Let's have a look at what you did as far as the AFR curve on this thing. So you're running at 12.5, 12.7,
Yeah.
you know, all the way from 3,000 up to the horsepower peak. And we'll see if the carburetor is able to do that too. That's one of the things we see in the carbs. Sometimes they will swing one way or the other.
There'll be a jump or a move, and sometimes they'll go lean to rich, rich to lean. And there are ways to tune around that, but it takes a pretty special carburetor guy to get that done.
That's you.
But we could probably raise this 2/10, lower it 2/10, and not see any power difference. So I don't know with a carburetor, if it moves 2 or 3/10, how much that matters. 2 or 3 or even 4/10, how much that really matters as far as power.
We keep talking about the carburetor. We need to go install one and find out.
My favorite.
I'm crossing my fingers that they make more peak horsepower.
I think the carburetor might be better everywhere.
You may be right.
Now we have our baseline, but I'm going to give you just a little bit more dirt before we move on about that EFI setup. This manifold right here is part of what comes with a complete Holley HP EFI package that you can buy. It's right around $3,000 for a small block Chevy, whether you've got Vortec or a TPI type cylinder head pattern or the classic pattern. And it comes with everything you need as far as wiring, sensors, computer, manifold, rails, pre-bent lines, the whole shebang. The only thing it doesn't come with is the fuel pump and the injectors themselves, because those things need to be sized towards how much horsepower you're planning on making, so you'll want to buy those separately. And just FYI, we're running 38 pound-per-hour injectors on this deal at 45 PSI. We tried to run a carburetor on this manifold that comes with the Holley kit, and basically it was really bad, which brings up a really good point, which is that multi-point EFI is only flowing dry air through the intake manifold. There's no fuel suspended in it, and that opens up the intake manifold design, and it's really one of the major benefits that we're not realizing here. That's why OE manifolds have big long runners in them that fuel would never make its way through, but dry air will. So we're not realizing those advantages here, but it is a really solid A/B test on how these things are gonna perform on the same manifold, and here's what we're using. On the engine in the dyno cell, we've got a Victor Jr. that's been modified with bungs for injectors. Edelbrock now sells this Victor E manifold, which is very similar, but comes pre-set up for injectors, and they've got rails for it also. And I noticed TrickFlow has a new manifold for small block Fords that you can also buy rails for. And if you've got that situation, you can also buy a Holley kit that does not include the hardware, but that does have everything that you need to put a throttle body and the EFI itself on your engine, just not the hard parts. So there's kind of what we've got going on here. Before we move on here to the old organized fuel leaks, the dinosaur implements known as carburetors. So the 4-barrel throttle body that we were running on the EFI is advertised at 1,000 CFM. So there's 2 things that I wanted to do in order to compare that to carburetors. One of which is run a 750 CFM carburetor, this one being a Holley XP, because this is really typical as to what a guy would run on the street on that 383 in the real world. But I also wanted to run a carburetor that more accurately was sized to the throttle body we used with the EFI. So this Quick Fuel Technology 4150 series carburetor flows an advertised 1,050 CFM. So that's gonna give us a real accurate A/B test, changing in nothing but the air door and the carburetor and the fuel pump. Let's go find out right now what we're gonna do with this 750 before we move on to the 1,050. We have the dyno measuring the manifold air temperature, which is going to be really interesting. I want to see if it's colder
We've
with
got
the
a temperature
carburetor.
probe right here. And kind of what we're looking for there is the difference in the vaporization of the fuel with the carburetor to see if it actually lowers the air inlet temperature significantly.
Any predictions here, Freiburger?
I don't think the 750 is going to make more power than the EFI.
You don't?
No.
You want to rethink that?
I love knowing and watching you
I
guys
know. I
banter.
hate it when you know. Brule already pre-tuned all this stuff so that we would be set and be able to do this quickly.
So this is really streamlined, right?
Yeah, look how much lower that is than the carburetor. It's an advantage for hood clearance.
And notice there's no booster venturi inside there to obstruct airflow.
Yeah, that's 1,000 CFM. This is 750 with a booster and junk in the way.
But basically, we just took this off and put that on. It changed nothing else but the fuel
Nothing else.
pressure.
Even the ignition timing still being handled by the Holley EFI. So the only change is the carburetor and the fuel pressure. Okay, now we have the Holley 750 double pumper on there, 4-barrel carburetor, and we're gonna see what happens. I bet it probably makes 2 or 3 numbers at peak and the rest is the same. That's my guess.
Oh, you think it's going to make more power? With the carb's way smaller
Barely.
than the throttle body, though.
Yeah,
It is a lot smaller.
but
Yeah, I think it's going to make less.
But does the engine even need the CFM that the throttle body offers? So we'll find out. Once again, we're gonna do 3 pulls. Steve has already pre-tuned this thing to be as close to the EFI as he could get it, but the thing is, carburetor tends to still go through a bigger range of air-fuel ratios throughout the pull. As you can see right here, this red line is the EFI, the black one is the carburetor, and a lot of this has to do, I think, with loading the carburetor at 2,500 RPM at full load, wide open throttle on the dyno. It doesn't like to actually move a fuel at that point.
It has trouble metering it through the booster and having a good signal.
Well, and the fuel has inertia that needs to be overcome. Whereas on the EFI, it's being sprayed right at the back of the intake valve. This thing, the fuel droplet has to accelerate through the intake manifold.
Right. Has to be drawn in all the way from the float bowl down into the cylinder.
Yeah. And here's our 3rd pull. Too close to call at this point.
I don't know where it's going to happen.
Gotta run the averages. So what we're looking at is 471.7 average horsepower at 5,700 RPM and a 5,000 RPM, 463.9 pound-feet of torque. Let's overlay the EFI and see how they compare. So the EFI being the red line,
It makes less torque.
and the carburetor actually improving here, but arguably, is that because the carburetor is richer right there than the EFI?
Let's take a look.
Here, once again, we're looking at the red line is the air-fuel ratio curve over the pull with the EFI, and the black one is the carburetor. And the carburetor is making more power, not just here at 3,200, where we're seeing that it's way richer than the EFI, but it's also making more power up here. So
Yeah, and there really wasn't much I could do about that swing, and I'm not sure there would be if I worked on it for days.
Yeah.
But with, I kind of just looked at where we were with the EFI, and I mean, it was rich here, lean here, but then out here it was basically the same. But I just didn't, that's really all I could do there. It's on both sides.
yeah, normally I think what we would expect to see is that the carburetor, because of the latent heat of vaporization of the fuel in the manifold, has a colder manifold air temp than the EFI and makes more power. That's the typical theory, right?
Speaking of air temp, let's take a look.
So this is going to be air temp inside the intake manifold, just under the throttle body. And look at that.
40 degrees.
89 degrees down to 80 degrees with the throttle body, and it is 40 degrees colder. It's actually approaching freezing with the carburetor. It's 37 degrees.
That probe is just below the butterfly.
Yeah, it is exactly there.
If we're down in the plenum, it might have a slight temperature change, but that's showing what a carburetor really does when it atomizes fuel.
And that's why in some race applications, they put fuel injectors up higher in the manifold so that it's cooling the charge throughout the runner and everything. That is a dramatic example of internet theory proven.
Yeah.
The carburetor does have cooler inlet track temperature than the EFI.
This is the right carburetor for this engine. It's not oversized to try and prove a point. I mean, that's the right carburetor. I'm just amazed at how close they really are at wide open.
The next thing we're going to do, though, is go to the 1,000 CFM carburetor, which is going to be closer to the airflow of the EFI, and we'll find out if it still makes more power down here, but also beats it up top.
If it needed the air, but the other challenge we may have is 2,500 RPM with a 1050,
It might not meet her.
4150 carburetors.
Yeah.
No, it'll be fine, Steve-O. Trust me.
It's all good.
Trust me, it's no problem.
I always trust you, Steve.
So the answer
Thanks,
here
Steve-O.
with the 750 carb versus the EFI is that the carburetor really wins from 3,300 RPM all the way up to 5,000, and the EFI is matching it and even beating it by a number or two at the very, very top of the range. And either way, it's not significant enough to make a difference to your life.
It's, you know, we're talking a total difference of 6 pound-feet. And when it cocomes to horsepower, geez, it's like
5, 4.5.
5, yeah.
Let's go put the 1,000 on there.
Let's do that and find out.
Yeah, I want to do that. So this is the EFI throttle body. The air doors or butterflies or throttle blades in this thing are the same diameter as what's in that carburetor right there. This is advertised at 1,000 CFM. The thing is, so is this carburetor. Well, actually, this is advertised at 1,050, but it's got boosters in the way. So they don't flow exactly the same, but both of them are gonna be far in excess of what this engine actually needs.
I know it's ridiculous.
It's gonna be interesting.
Can you go work the throttle leveler in there so I can... I like something about to run little errands like that.
1,050 CFM, this is Dulcich's last hope for the carburetor making better peak horsepower.
Oh, I mean, it's almost certain that it will.
You're supposed to.
Okay, let's do it. Once again, 3 runs, we're gonna average them. Here goes number 1.
Pretty stout.
Carb's way better. We're seeing bigger torque numbers at peak and 480 horsepower for the first time, but we got one more pull before we can do our average. Carburetor wins peak power
Carburetor wins.
everywhere.
Period.
Flat out.
Flat out. Now maybe what we're seeing is CFM to CFM comparison, but the advantages of the cooler air.
Oh, yes.
Oh, what is the air temp? Let's have a look. 36 degrees in the intake manifold. So now the results of 3 pulls on average with the 1,050 CFM carburetor. 469.8 pound-feet of torque and 480.2 horsepower. By far the biggest number that we've seen. Go ahead and overlay that with the EFI. Oh! Carburetor dominates in black versus the EFI in red. Now down here we've got our total fuel flow, and you might say, well, that's not equal. Well, the deal is when you make less power, you use less fuel. At the end of the last test with the 750 carb, you emphatically stated this is the right carburetor for this engine.
Well,
do you revise that?
You know, I honestly, I've seen guys who run on a small block at 750 and then a 950 or 1,000 or something. And at the track, they didn't respond as well. Now, this thing feels like it drives really well on the dyno.
On the dyno.
But I'm thinking that
I still
maybe
think it doesn't
at
drive
the
as
track,
good.
maybe it's a situation where it runs another mile an hour, but loses a couple hundredths or, you know.
Because it won't accelerate as hard.
Yeah, because it's just, it's not metering the fuel as well in that lower RPM range. But here at wide open throttle, I mean, if a guy had enough converter, I suppose it would.
Yeah, that's pretty definitive though, really, when you look at the divergence of those curves. The carburetor trumps the EFI on this particular engine combination pretty much everywhere.
A guy's gonna have to look at it and weigh the obvious downsides of the carburetor, which I will fill you in on as soon as we go wrap this whole show up.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Okay, Dulcich, let me have it.
What? I already know where this is going. It's a setup. You want to make me a knuckle-dragging Neanderthal who doesn't like fuel injection at all. So let's just get that out of the way and we'll get down to brass tacks on why one may be better than the other.
Well, the carburetor made more power. No
Okay.
question.
Is there any other criteria you'd like to discuss? Or do we just end it right there?
Well, I think every other criteria is stuff that we have to just sort of estimate because you can't test it on the dyno.
Right.
I think the EFI is going to be superior in drivability if it's got any kind of a decent tune-up in it, especially compared to what most guys do with their carburetors, which is take it out of the box, plop it on, and drive it and blow black smoke and go, it's way better than EFI. You know, I think a guy who actually goes and has his EFI tuned is going to have a better overall performing car than the typical guy who doesn't tune his carburetor.
Well, I'll tell you where I think it's a slam dunk to have EFI. Boosted applications with a turbo or a centrifugal blower, or let's say something like autocross or off-road where you're sloshing fuel around in the bowl and it floods out and coughs and sputters.
Yep.
Makes you lose races.
Here's like the really bad news though. I added up all the prices of everything that we actually used in this test, including like considering a fuel pump and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It costs like $2,500 to $3,000 more to have the EFI than the carburetor setups that we used.
Well, those kind of numbers make me convinced that it's probably not the right induction system for this kind of a motor, because that's about half the cost of the entire package sitting right up here at the top.
I would say that there's pro touring guys who, even on a 383 like this, want to have the smooth throttle response and no carburetor sloshing, and just the cool factor of having EFI. But I agree with you, the real advantage of this deal is definitely going to be on boost or on higher performing applications than this, or for anybody who's a tech geek and wants the extra features of the EFI, like data logging, nitrous control, boost control, AC idle up, gauges, all of that stuff that you just don't get when you only buy a carburetor.
Oh no, you get all the doodads with all the wiring, that's for sure. And it's not always about value. Like you said, you might just be a tech guy and you just want to dial stuff in on your computer.
Yeah,
and
I'm into it. I would totally do it. As a matter of fact, do you know what I want to do with this package?
put it on my car and tune it up for me.
Pro Charger.
Oh, that would be even better.
Pro Charger is going to make it really good. Maybe if we get around to that someday, you'll see it on Engine Masters presented by AMSOIL. The EFI is actually pretty good.
Yeah, I like it.
You do?
Yeah.
What? He said it. He actually said it. I didn't think you'd ever actually admit it.
It's just all this.
Oh, there's all those wires.
All
though.
that Pisgetti up there.
Conclusion, take one, ABC mark. Good, Chris? Yep. Marker. It's like it's off.